Hey everyone! So I recently released a guide to the Shadow Lash, which is the base pre-class change assassin class, and now it is time to cover the first class change of the assassin line, and that is Darkblade. So at level 80, you are going to finally reach the end of the class change quest line and be able to convert your Shadow Lash into a Darkblade. So if you did see my Shadow Lash video, you might remember I described Shadow Lash as a core skill abusing class. Well, now we have Darkblade, a tactical skill abusing class. So we've simply gone from abusing core skill to abusing tactical skill damage. And if anything, it gets even more insane now because literally you have a skill that deals 90% of your damage. So very interesting class, and I'm excited to discuss this one with you because once you understand how this class works, it's pretty ridiculous. So let's jump right in like I did in the last video. I'm going to show you my loadout here, and we're going to go skill by skill and explain why this loadout is best in slot and how the class works. So Darkblade, everything about Darkblade is focused on this tactical skill here. This is everything. This is your reason of existence as a Darkblade is Crimson Ring. Now, Crimson Ring is a phenomenal damage dealing skill, and let me describe what it does. Throw darts around you dealing physical damage equal to 388%, and when dealing damage, remove Decay from your target. For each stack of Decay on the current target, increase Crimson Ring damage by 140%. So this is Crimson Ring. What is Decay? Good question. I'll show you now. Your core skill in Shadow Lash was Cross Slash, and now you have Serrated Dart. So Serrated Dart throws darts in a frontal area, dealing physical damage, a lot of it, and it applies 2 stacks of Decay for 25 seconds. So Decay is a damage over time effect that deals 5% of Serrated Dart's damage as continuous damage every 1.5 seconds. Apply 25 stacks of Decay to all enemies at the start of battle. Now, when I very first time saw this class, I thought, oh okay, this must be a damage over time class. And how wrong I was. So while Decay itself does deal damage, the main focus for getting lots of stacks of Decay is not because of the damage over time effect, it's because of Crimson Ring. And let's read this again now that we understand our core skill is applying lots of stacks of Decay, this damage over time effect, which stacks up to 25. Then we look here and say, what does this say again? For each stack of Decay on the current target, increase damage by 140%? Well, let's do the math on that for a second. If every stack of Decay increases damage by 140% and we have 25 stacks, that's a 3,500% damage increase. Yes, you didn't mishear me. So this is how this build works. This build works by completely maxing out your Crimson Ring damage by getting as many stacks of Decay as you can and then boosting up your tactical skill damage. Now, for you to truly understand how ridiculous this tactical skill is, there's only one way I can show you. I'm going to hop into a rift quickly with some mercenaries and you're going to see just how silly this is. So create party, recruit mercenaries, and let me show you this because this is pretty comical. This is pretty comical. I think I lagged out. No, I'm in. Okay, I thought I lagged for a second. So let's see, because it's always good to see visually what I'm saying than just me talking words. So check this out, because this is pretty amazing. And when I first saw this playing this class, I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. I understand now. So let's see if we can highlight the damage this deals. 3, 2, 1. 31.6 million damage crit. Okay, interesting. The ad just disappeared. Where'd it go? How about this boss? Let's see what happens. 100%. Oh my god, 136.6 million damage. I almost one-shot the boss. Okay, so let's hop into Dragon quickly so I can show you this. Because what I want to do is I want to actually have like as much combat as I can, so then I can show you the damage breakdown so you fully understand what's going on here. Alright, let's load in. Okay, so we're going into battle now. And let's let this play out for a little while. Yeah, you can see 69.3 million damage per second. It's because it's so crazy. It's the way this class works. You're basically all your damage is centered around your tactical skill use. So it's been what, 20 seconds now. Let's do view details. Look at this. I mean, 90% may be an exaggeration, but you can see here just how much of your damage output is Crimson Ring. It is over 50%, is a huge portion of your damage, and that is why we basically absolutely maxed out everything with regards to Crimson Ring. Now let me leave and I'll continue with the skills explanation. I just wanted to show you visually what I mean by this being a tactical skill abusing class. There you have it. 136.6 million damage crit. That's insane. Now I will say the dynamic of this class is a little RNG based, because you're gonna get maximum damage when your Crimson Ring lucky crits. Now if you don't know what a lucky crit is, you have crit rate and you have determination. When you get a crit, you get a crit. When you get determination, you get a determination. And if you get both a crit and a determination on the same attack, it creates a lucky crit, which significantly increases the damage dealt. So unfortunately, you do have a little bit of RNG with Crimson Ring, where you're going to want it to hit lucky crits as much as possible, which you're going to have some runs where you get no lucky crits, then you're going to have another run where it lucky crits every time it casts. And so, for example, doing Dragon is a little bit more RNG than most classes, because you're going to be going for a run to try to get as many Crimson Ring lucky crits as possible to make your DPS spike like crazy. And as well, what's interesting about this damage output is, because all the damage is like loaded into the tactical skill, you basically have this DPS where it's like sort of average, 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 and then a huge spike, and then back down, and then average, 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 huge spike. So it's almost like a heartbeat meter. You just like this is how the damage works. So you do medium damage in between each tactical skill cooldown, and then when the tactical skills are off cooldown, Crimson Ring just creates like a giant explosion of damage. So I apologize for waffling a little bit, but let's carry on with the explanation, and I'll explain why the rest of these tactical skills and passive skills benefit the insane damage of Crimson Ring. So next up is Transcendence. Upon casting, immediately restore energy to full and make the core skill not consume energy, but reduce its damage by 73% for 4.5 seconds. Now, some people may look at this and say, oh, reduce damage, I don't like that. But we've already established the bulk of the damage in this build comes from our tactical skills. So it's okay for us to reduce the damage of our core skill, because we're only using the core skill as a means to get decay stacks. So this basically allows us to get an immediate cast of core skill, plus makes these core skill not consume energy, which allows us to spam the core skill and get lots of stacks of decay. So the next tactical skill, so anyway, very important, an essential part of this build. The next tactical skill is one that has created a lot of confusion, and for myself as well. I actually didn't run this for a long time because I was testing other builds. There were some skills in my mind that sounded like they were better, but this is the best. So Shadow Acceleration. Upon casting, increase attack frequency by 70% for 7 seconds. If the core skill is of a shadow element, restore 100% energy and increase shadow damage. Now, the first thing I will say is, unfortunately, there's no shadow damage in the build. This is a physical damage build, which means that the entire second half of this skill does nothing. And for this reason, a lot of people have said, myself included, I was like, no, this can't be the best skill, right? I mean, half the skill doesn't even work. Why would you run a shadow damage bonus skill for a physical damage build? But the first part of the skill, increase attack frequency by 70% for 7 seconds, is essential. And this is what makes up for the, you know, somewhat useless second part of the skill. This increased attack frequency greatly increases your DPS output in between your tactical skill uses, number one, and number two, it also makes sure that you will have enough core attacks before your next Crimson Ring to reach maximum decay stacks. Now remember that Crimson Ring stacks, the damage it deals is based off the stacks of decay you have on the target. So if you have the ability to get all full stacks of decay every single time before the cooldown of Crimson Ring is up, then you're going to deal maximum damage. And having this here basically guarantees you're going to reach maximum stacks before your next Crimson Ring cast. So that's why, despite the shadow damage stuff here, this is still best in slot. I have tested a bunch of other skills, including like Shadow Demon Descent, which I thought would be best in slot. It was not, and that's just how it is. So if you are going to, the one thing I will say before moving on to the passive skills, if you're going to have to take one of these skills off in order to put like an interrupt or a dispel ability, most likely I would take off Shadow Acceleration and keep Transcendence. So if you were going to have to swap one of the tactical skills to put an interrupt, probably swap Shadow Acceleration and put your interrupt here. That would be my best suggestion. Now let's move on to the tactical skills. Now let's move on to the passive skills and understand how these 5 passive skills both affect Crimson Ring and the overall damage output of this build. So we do have some of the new abilities that came with the Class Change 1 skills pool. You know, I have made a separate video about how the Class Change works. There is a separate pool of skills and some base skills from the pre-class change class as well, but it's a little bit of a mix. So let's start with the leftmost passive skill here, Homecoming. So let's read this out. When casting Serrated Dart, which is our core skill, and Crimson Ring, deal an additional hit of physical damage equal to 20.8% of the first damage and apply 1 stack of decay. So this is very, very good, because when you cast Crimson Ring and you deal 136 million damage with it, this Homecoming is going to deal an additional hit of 20% of that. So that's going to be just around whatever 30 million damage as well. So you're basically getting this percentage more damage from every single Crimson Ring you do, which is a very nice boost. And as well, it applies another stack of decay, which is just like a small bonus, but it's nice as well to have. So very important, very essential part of this build. Increases your skill damage too here, as you can see. So this is a very nice damage bonus, which is itself a damage increasing skill. Like, this skill deals damage. It does 20% of each attack of your Crimson Ring and Serrated Dart. So very important skill to have. Somewhat self-explanatory why it's so good. You can actually see it has both of the main skills written in its description, therefore it would be common sense that it is one of the best. Crimson Armament is another absolutely essential ability for this build. Every 6 casts of Serrated Dart, our core skill, increase physical damage by 20%, and this is the real deal right here. Increase the maximum number of decay stacks to 33 for 15 seconds. This is huge. So originally the maximum decay stacks is 25. This increases it to 33. That means we deal all of a sudden 1,000% more damage with our Crimson Ring. 1,000% more damage. 8 more stacks, 140% per stack. 8, do the math. It's 1,040% more damage possible now by having decay stacked to 33. Really essential and sick. Like, by far the most important part of this passive skills loadout is Crimson Armament, just for this decay stack here. And of course, increase physical damage by 20%, as if increasing the Crimson Ring damage by 1,000% wasn't enough. You also get a physical damage increase of 20% on top of that. Insane. So very, very insane and important ability here, an essential part of this build. Next up, we have Sudden Shift. Now, every 4 core skill casts, increase tactical skill damage by 40% for the next 7 seconds. Now, this, I think, somewhat self-explanatory. We're getting almost all of our damage from tactical skills, therefore to increase tactical skill damage by 40% is big. And you use your core skill enough times that you'll have this effect active when your Crimson Ring is going to be hitting. So this is another very important ability to stack your Crimson Ring damage even higher. Whoops, didn't mean to go all the way out. So next up in the list, onto our 4th passive skill, you have Fair and Square. Now, there is some variation you see in people's, if you go to the leaderboards for Darkblade, you're going to see some people running 1 or 2 different skills here. For example, you might see someone, instead of Fair and Square, they're running Cross-Class Mastery. But after doing some testing myself, I have found that Fair and Square is the best passive. When dealing AoE damage, including damage to all targets, increase damage by 23.8%. If there's only 1 target, further increase it by 4%. So this is very, very good, because both Crimson Ring, which is an AoE, and Serrated Dart, which is also an AoE, will both benefit from this. Plus, if you dealing 23.8% more damage in AoE situations, when you're in a single target against the boss, it's and further 4%, making this 28% practically. So this is very, very important. And I think it's pretty so the way AoE damage dealt, if the skill here says it deals AoE damage, then even if you're hitting 1 target, it still considers it AoE damage, because it's a damage type. It's an AoE damage source. So this affects it, and you'll get like a 24% increase in AoE situations and a 28% damage increase in single target situations like boss. Very important to have this there. And then, as they say, save the best for last. Now we have the 2nd highest damage dealing skill after Crimson Ring. So here we have Shadow Scythe. Shadow Scythe is very similar to how Homecoming works, which we looked at here, but let me read out the skill description of Shadow Scythe. When dealing damage with tactical skills, trigger Shadow Scythe, dealing an additional hit of true damage equal to 31.4% of the triggered damage to the target. Again, if we deal 136 million damage with our Crimson Ring, this will come in here and hit a 40 million true damage attack right after on the target. So very, very powerful skill and deals a lot of damage. And if you wanted to then break this down in like what 3 skills deal the most damage in this loadout, it's number 1 Crimson Ring, number 2 Shadow Scythe, and number 3 Homecoming. These 3 are the absolute max damage output of this class, and everything else is there to support that. So as you can see, I hope you understand so far that everything about this build is around jacking up the damage of Crimson Ring. So now that we've established skills, let's move on to talents. So when you get your class change, you do actually get a new talent tree and unlock some more talents of the second one too. So let's start with the first talent tree here, Art of Arrow, which is the new talent tree for Darkblade. Now obviously the basic ability here, physical damage increase 5%, great. Now in Shadow Lash, it was very easy. It was just all left, all the way down. Now here we actually go right first and then all left. So slight difference. The reason we do this is between these 2 abilities, and I'll explain both. So on the left you have Overwhelming Force. Within 12 seconds after entering battle, if the target has Decay, increase the amount of Decay stacks by 1 each second. Okay, interesting. This one, when equipped with Crimson Armament, immediately activate the Crimson Armament state at the start of battle, but reduce tactical skill damage for 10% for 10 seconds. Now, people might see this and say, I don't know, probably getting the additional stacks per second is better, but it is not. When you're stacking Decay, you're stacking it at such a fast rate by spamming your core skill with your tactical skill attack increase bonuses, that this 1 per second just is almost meaningless. It's not enough to really benefit you in any meaningful way. Lightning Reflex, however, guarantees that you're starting the battle with Crimson Armament active, and even with this 10% skill reduction, because Crimson Armament gives like a 20% increase to the damage of tactical skills, or sorry, to the damage, I think, let me just double check quickly. Yeah, so physical damage. So even though this reduces skill damage by 10%, you're getting a 20% physical damage boost from Crimson Armament anyway. So it's just basically a slightly nerfed damage output for 10 seconds. But in exchange for that, you get a guaranteed buffed hit of your Crimson Ring on the first Crimson Ring of the battle. So it basically guarantees that you're opening each battle with a boosted Crimson Ring attack with the 33 stacks increase, which you should, in theory, with the slight delay to cast a tactical skill, you should have one core skill attack, which should increase it by enough stacks to get a above 25 stack Crimson Ring attack. So that's why we run Lightning Reflexes first, and then we go all left down the side here. So let's go down the left side and understand why we pick all of these ones here. So the next one, Tactical Determination, 30 seconds after the start of battle, increase all tactical skill damage by 15%. Very, very important, which means after 30 seconds, you'll start dealing even more damage with your Crimson Ring. Very important. Great. Straightforward, easy to understand. Explosive Ring. This is kind of a crazy one. Crimson Ring always deals a critical hit, but its crit damage is reduced by 80%, and then every 1% of your crit increases the damage of Crimson Ring by 0.3%. So this is an interesting trade-off. You reduce your crit hit damage by 80%, but every single hit is a crit. Because we know all of our damage is loaded into Crimson Ring, guaranteeing it a crit every single time is huge. It is huge. And you may think, oh my god, this means I don't even have to put a single point in crit. But unfortunately, you still do. Obviously, you're still boosting your damage, and you still have other skills which deal damage, which will crit. So you still need to run the same recommended amount of crit rate, which is the 35% mark. Now, this does mean it is somewhat easier than other classes to trigger a lucky crit on this ability. Since you have a guaranteed crit every single time, you're basically just hoping you're going to get the determination to also hit, which is like going to be as well a 35% chance if you've built your character properly. So you're going to have a 35% chance essentially every single Crimson Ring cast to hit a lucky crit on that ability. And then finally, another extremely important skill here in the talent tree. When Crimson Ring deals a crit hit, which is now 100% of the time, ignore 15% of the enemy's defense. So this double synergy here is perfect. We just made it crit 100% of the time, and now we make it so every time it deals a critical hit, it ignores the enemy's defense by 15%. Perfect synergy. Amazing. Now for the secondary passive here, wait, am I running the wrong thing right now? Holy moly. Okay, apologies for that. I forgot to switch this back. Okay, I was running a different talent disc for a trial run that we were doing earlier, but let me explain now. This is the actual proper loadout here. Sorry for the misinformation until now. So Zealous Burden is your actual best in slot second talent disc here, and increased crit rate by 2%. Great, but let's go down here so we understand. This is a further increase of crit rate. This is a Fury skill, so every time you deal a crit hit, you hit an additional hit of 500% of attack once every 10 seconds. Great. And then, when triggering a crit hit, increase the damage of this hit by 5%. Since we've just made our Crimson Ring crit 100% of the time, this is a guaranteed 5% damage increase every time you use it. And then the final one is simply more crit rate. Now, crit rate does increase the damage of Crimson Ring through this ability here as well. Even if it's always critting, we get bonus damage from your crit rate here, which makes it not, you don't want to ever completely give them a crit rate. So this is the best talent disc because of this one mostly. This is the main reason. So that's it. Your two best talents are, or your best talent, sorry, is right side 1, left side 3, and then Zealous Burden. There you have it. So moving on, I think the next, there's only 2 more things to, let me just quickly touch on stats. So it's pretty much the same stat balance you would have had in Shadow Lash and most other DPS classes. You want to keep your crit and determination fairly balanced around the 35% mark, as closer as possible. You want to get your accuracy up to, you know, just as much as you can get in order to deal 100% hit rate to the dragon and other bosses. And then once you have this at the levels you're happy with, then you're going to stack as much attack as possible, as much haste and mastery as possible, and crit damage as well, especially since we have that talent that reduces the crit damage dealt by Crimson Ring of 80%. The more crit damage you have, the better you can offset that reduction. When it comes to Mamon, it's the same as all of the DPS. You're going to run Demon Hound with your turn and Echo. And then all of your moves are going to be based on balancing those stats I've just explained. Mostly you're going to try to eventually run 3 times crit damage, evasion or HP as your defensive, and then whatever flex slots here you need to get to, you know, 35, 105-ish on accuracy, then haste, mastery, crit damage, etc. So that's pretty much Darkblade in a nutshell. I mean, I can't think of much more to add about the class. I think we all understand how it works, why it does the insane damage it does, why it is a bit more RNG oriented than other classes, because you're basically stuck waiting for your Crimson Ring to get a lucky crit to deal your maximum damage output, but why it is so much fun. And it's just so rewarding to sit there and see a single skill hit for like 140 million damage, while other classes are out there like doing little chip basic attacks dealing like 2 million. We're like, nah, we don't do that. We're here for the big numbers. 140 million one hit, no problem. So anyway, that's Darkblade in a nutshell. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this guide helpful and you're able to bring out the best and most damage of your own Darkblades. And that's it. So if you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well, hit that notification bell if you'd like to know when the next videos are going to be uploaded. And yeah, join our Discord as well. The link is in the description down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.